Welcome to my channel. Today I have the new Natasha Denona Yucca palette in front of me. This just came out. I actually ordered it on pre-order and it arrived literally a couple hours ago. So I wanted to get a video out real quick to give you swatches and compare it with other Natasha Denona palettes that have similar shades and give you my first impressions. I have not used this on my eyes yet. I've just swatched it a few times to see what the shades are like. So I think I'll start by going shade by shade and swatching them. So this first shade is called Plantasia. This is described as a sparkling foiled green and bronzy rosewood duochrome. So I'll probably put up some close-up footage here. My first impression about these shimmers is that they feel different than any other shimmer from any Natasha Denona palette. I have all of the mini palettes and a decent amount of the full-size palette, as well as some of the minis, and I have never felt any of her shades like this. They feel so smooth, but also they have like a pieciness to them and a really sparkly finish. A few people mentioned these are the same formula as the face and eye palettes. I don't have any of those. So if you do have those and you like those shimmers, these are the same allegedly. This is a duochrome. I mean, the flip is not super apparent. Like I had to break out my ring lights to really see it, but it is super dimensional and there are a bunch of different colored sparkle flecks. So I'm a really big fan of the shade and I'm excited to use it in a look. This next one is called Calathea. And this is described as a matte, medium, dark olive green. This one does not swatch well. I find a lot of times the cream to powder shades don't swatch really well. But this is a cream to powder. It's like a muted grayish green. I feel like Natasha Denona has two cream to powder formulas. There's like a more waxy, stiff one and then a more like squishy emollient version. This falls somewhere in between them. It doesn't swatch really well, but I feel like if you use a coarse brush, it will probably work fine on the eyes. But again, I haven't tried this on my eyes yet. Okay, next, this one's called Komorebi, and this is described as a sparkling foiled mustard gold. This one, in my opinion, is the standout of this palette, and I don't know if you're going to be able to see in this swatch, maybe in the close-up, but there are so many different colored sparkle flecks going on in here. It's so smooth, and it just like picks up so easily with your finger. It applies really easily, very pigmented, but it's insanely dimensional. I'm trying to see if you can see here. I might need to show you some out of focus shots to see all the different colored sparkle flecks, but I really think this is going to be my favorite in the palette. Okay, this next one is called Acacia. It's described as a matte golden olive. This is a regular like creamy matte formula. It applied pretty easily. It seems to be consistent based on my first impression with the other creamy matte formulas, but I will have to come back and let you know how it performs on the eyes. It's like a mustardy yellow, but definitely has a strong green undertone to it. The shade is called Camu Camu, and it's described as a matte vibrant lime. This again is the creamy matte formula. This is like almost a neon, and from my experience, neons never really perform well. Like they rarely show up in an opaque layer in the first swatch. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case with this one, but as you can see when I swatched it, like two swipes got a pretty opaque layer. Seems to be a creamy formula, so I will have to also update on how this performs on the eyes. This one is definitely a lot more saturated and vibrant. Okay, this next shade is called Tipu, and it's described as a matte, dusty mustard green. This is a creamy matte, by the way, and my first thought was that this is really similar to Acacia. I know Natasha Denona is all about the undertones, like she'll often include shades that are quite similar with different undertones. So I guess that's kind of what situation is going on here. I'm going to swatch them next to each other so you can see. So here they are. This is Acacia on top and this is Tipu on the bottom. Let me build them both up. So to me, this is like splitting hairs, but I'm not a makeup artist. I'm just a girl who loves eyeshadow. So maybe if you are more of like into the artistry aspect, you can appreciate the difference. But from what I can see, this is slightly more green and this is slightly more warm toned. This shade is called Elysian, and this one I was really excited about. This is described as a sparkling foiled medium taupe, and this is another just like insanely dimensional and beautiful, cool toned, kind of carbon gray, I would say, and this has so many different flecks of sparkles throughout it, but feels very, very smooth. Definitely one I am excited to use. Like sometimes Natasha Denona shimmers I find to be lackluster. Like they're ones that I would like put a topper shade on top of. to make them stand out, but these I think would really stand on their own. So this one is extremely reflective and shiny and has that, again, pieciness to it. Okay, this next shade is called Valley, and it's described as a matte, dusty mustard brown. This is probably the closest thing in this palette to like a warm neutral that Natasha Denona loves to put in all of the palettes. It's just like a warm mid-tone, kind of like mustardy brown. It can be built up. It's also, I forgot to say, it's a creamy matte. A lot of times with Natasha Denona shades, like when you add more pigment, it will really deepen it. So it can be definitely built up to a like deeper mid-tone brown. Probably will be good for structuring a look and deepening an outer corner. I mean, depending on the depth of your skin. Okay, this next shade is called Citrine, and it's described as a matte medium mustard citrine. Someone told me in a comment that this is a repeat shade from the Sunrise palette. It's not. It's definitely a new shade. Citrine in the Sunrise palette, I can actually show you right now. I'm going to swatch Citrine from the Sunrise palette on top. To me, they're like very, very different. Citrine is more of a true yellow, and Citrine from the Yucca palette is more of a greenish, like chartreuse yellow. Kind of confusing that she named them the same thing, but they are definitely different tones. Okay, next we have Ray, which is described as a metallic green gold. This is the most like dull of all the shimmers in this palette. It still has a metallic sheen to it, but it doesn't have that like really dimensional reflective property that the other shimmers seem to have. It's like a mid-tone gold with a slight green hint to it. Don't really see any different flecks in it, but it is shiny. It's just not quite as shiny as the others. Okay, next, Flax. This is described as a matte dark brown, and I'm like thrilled that this doesn't have a warm undertone to it. It seems to fall in the true neutral category. It didn't swatch super well, but some of my favorite formulas don't swatch well. It can definitely be built up to a really opaque deep brown. This is just like a pretty standard creamy matte. Deep brown, doesn't have really a cool or warm undertone in my opinion. Okay, next this shade is called Fushi, and it's described as a matte light medium mustard yellow. This to me is like an orange in my opinion. This is a cream to powder. It does not pick up as easily as the other cream to powders. It like, I don't know if you can tell, but like it kind of like has some resistance to it, I guess, and it feels a little bit more gritty than some of her other cream to powders, but it's definitely pigmented, and I think it would pick up a little bit easier with a brush. So typically I would use a coarse blending brush to apply the cream to powder shades, so I'm curious to see how this will perform in that setting. Next, this one's called Macchia, and it's described as a sparkling foiled medium golden olive. This is a really unique tone. It's definitely in the green family, but it's very desaturated. It has almost like a silver quality to it, but also has that warmth from straight on. But as you can see, like kind of from the side, it goes into more of a cool tone. Really beautiful. Also, I forgot to mention, so it looks like there's a new formula in this palette because, let's see, Plantasia, Komorebi, Elysian, and Macchia all have SF as like a suffix behind the shade number. So I have not seen that before from Natasha Denona, so that appears to be a new type of formula from her. And like I said, this definitely is a new texture. I have not seen this in any of the other palettes I own. Okay, next, Ixia is described as a matte burnt caramel. This is a shade she's done similar iterations to this shade in like every palette pretty much. It's just like a warm, orangey, toasted brown. It's pretty. It's a creamy matte. It applied really nicely in a swatch, so I think it'll probably stand up to some of her other similar shades. Okay, and finally, this is called Willow, and it's described as a matte, medium, dark teal green. I think this is the first time I have personally seen her do this type of like deep or mid-tone like green in this creamy matte formula. Every other one I have is in the cream to powder formula. So I am curious to see how this will perform. I think the cream to powder like tones like this are really easy to work with, but I have not tried a really colorful creamy matte formula like this. So I will definitely update you and let you know. But this is really pretty. It definitely looks similar to a shade from the Zendo palette and the Metropolis palette, so I'll be sure to compare those. I'm going to show you some swatches that I took in direct sunlight, and then we'll go into the comparisons. Okay, so I hope those comparisons were helpful. I will do an Instagram post with them labeled too, so you can refer back to it. But anyway, I just wanted to get this video up quickly because I know she's having a sale. I think there's like a coupon you can use on this palette, which I was not aware of when I placed my order. But if I can find that, I'll put it in the description. Overall, like I said, I have not used this on my eyes. I am really excited about this. I will definitely report back once I have a chance to do a few looks with it. I'm going to come back and do a review on the palette and let you know how it performs and all that. I think with Natasha Denona, I find the midi palettes are pretty consistent in terms of quality. Feel free to disagree with me in the comments, but I am a huge fan of the midi palettes. I collect them at this point because I always know I'm going to love and use them. And the best part is that the pans are removable, so you can kind of create your own color stories or store them all together. I hope this video was helpful. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe if you're not already. And I will be back soon to update you on this palette. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.